Good morning. Okay, so this is second hour, honors history, and we yesterday kind of introduced the beginning of the stock market crash, and we were talking about what? We're talking about Boeing, right? Boeing stock, and how if you put all your eggs in one basket, you got a problem, okay? And how a stock is only worth what somebody else is willing to pay you for it. So when people panic and they start selling and nobody's buying, what's your stock worth?
Nothing.
It could be worth nothing. Okay, now if you hold on to it, you don't sell it, and the company survives and over time it recovers, you're going to be okay. Okay, but this depression, guys, is going to last more than around a decade. Okay, so some people can't afford to just wait it out. You know what I mean? Especially people that are up there in age a little bit, that are trying to retire, and that's their nest egg. That becomes a big problem, okay? But one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys, and this is more practical than, studying history. This is about investing and some basics that you guys should know, okay? I did this a little bit with the other class. I got to it, so do any of you guys own any stock? Do you know what it's invested in? Okay. So most of the time, what you do is you buy what are called mutual funds. You don't just go, I'm going to go buy Amazon stock. Okay, that's all your eggs in one basket. But you can buy what's called a mutual fund. And if I do this, guys, you need about $2,000 to get into a mutual fund, $2,500. Okay, and what you're doing is you're buying into a bunch of different companies at the same time. So, let's say we're going to do a mutual fund of blue chip, big company stocks. Okay, so you take Microsoft, you take General Electric, General Motors, Amazon. You might want to get in to some pharmaceutical companies like Bayer. You might want to get into like Coca-Cola, McDonald's. Give me another big company here. Apple.
Whirlpool.
What's that?
Whirlpool. Appliances.
Who?
Whirlpool Appliances.
Whirlpool. You can make me spell that. Okay, so what you do is about 6% of your money is in this, 6% of the 2,000 in that, 6% here, 5% here, 5% here, 5% here, 4% here, 4% here, 4% here, okay? So if General Motors has a rough year and their value, their stock goes down, but Coca-Cola and McDonald's have good years, they balance each other out. You follow me? So if you just own one stock and it's General Motors and they have a bad year, what happens to your portfolio? It goes down. But if you use mutual funds, you tend to go along with the stock market. And as I showed you yesterday up on that graphic, the stock market over time generally goes up between 6 and 12%. You following me? So guys, you've all heard of 401ks? Thank you. This is what 401ks go into. Okay? If you ever get a job and they say, we offer a 401k, do it. I know you're going to have money taken out of your check. I just got my tax form today from Bishop Carroll. I took $2,700 out of my check this year that went into my 401k. The diocese matched that. So I got $2,700 of free money on top of my salary that went into investments so that when I retire, I have a 401k that will help me retire. Okay? Which I told you guys the other day, I don't know if I told this class, but 21 years here at Bishop Carroll. And I'm about the average salary of the average American. My 401k is about $120,000. okay, by doing that. So guys, you need to do a 401k if your company offers it, that you go to work for. It's the smart thing to do. Now, I can't touch that money until I'm 62 without paying big penalties, okay? I mean, you can get that money out, but it's going to cost you, all right? So that's really for retirement, okay? Now, the other thing you can do, and this is what my wife can do, and I bet many of your families do this as well, and that is when you have extra money left over, you invest that as well, okay? And the place to do that is what called a Roth IRA. Okay, now this is important. Roth was a senator. This is named after a senator who's since passed on. But he really wanted the American people to save for retirement. Okay, so they put this together, guys. When you invest in a Roth IRA, and you can do it just like you do your 401k and mutual funds, okay, you can go to Edward Jones or any little broker. There's Edward Jones on every corner. You guys know what I'm talking about? You seen them? That's where we go. We go to Edward Jones out east. Got a guy. Say, I want to open a Roth IRA. Okay? Or you just go in and say, I need to start doing some investing for retirement. And they're going to say, well, you need to open a Roth IRA. Okay? You can put in $6,500 a year into a Roth IRA. And when you get it out at 62, it's tax free. You pay no taxes on the gains that you made. That's huge. Now, if you do a traditional IRA, because you can do those too. My wife and I have traditional as well. Okay? You're going to pay taxes, capital gains taxes, on the money you make in the market. Not on the principal you put in, but what you make on it. The investment. You follow me? Any questions on this? Because this is really, I think, something that is important. The surprising saga of two 19-year-olds. Yeah?
Does the percentage of your 401k depend on the company?
Yes. Most of them are pretty close. So they ask you to put away 6%, and they will match that. Some will match up to 5%. Some will go the full 6%. So like dollar for dollar. You put in $1, we put in $1, up to 6% of what you make. Most companies won't go beyond that. I could put 8% in, but they're only going to match up to 6%. Does that make sense? So if you want to put in more, now, I guess this is going to be on YouTube, but I trust Edward Jones with my money more than I trust I'm going to get a better return there, I believe, okay? So I don't mean to bash on anybody, but like if you look at percentages, my wife's 401k at Koch Industries way outperforms the one here, okay? Because they have people there that, are really good at it. So, yeah. All right, so no, the surprising saga of two 16-year-olds. I'm gonna show this right here. Okay, this column here, okay, is the one we're going to talk about first. And this one here, this is Joe. Joe, at the age of 19, invests $2,000 a year in the stock market. Okay, he does so at 19 through the age of 26. So for how many years?
7.
Let's make it 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 years. So grand total, he invests $16,000 in the market. He stops investing at the age of 26. Okay? That money sits in the stock market for 40 years. When he turns 65, that account will be worth $1 million, $1,035,000. Then you have Jack. Jack doesn't start investing till he's 27. he invests $2,000 a year from the age of 27 to the age of 65, which is like 38 years. So 38 times 2,000, he invests $76,000. Remember, Joe invested $16,000. This guy, Jack, is investing $76,000. At the end of, at 65 years old, Jack will have $778,000. So Joe, who started at 19 to 26 and only invested $1,600 or $16,000, will have more money at the age of 65 than somebody that invested $76,000 because of all the time that money has to grow. You guys have heard of compound interest, okay? So the importance of doing this when you're young is big. Now, most 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds don't have an extra $2,000 laying around to throw in a Roth IRA. Okay, so you may need to try when you get that first good job. Okay, when you get out of college, you're going to be there. You guys are going to be there. You're going to come out of college hopefully making more money than I do right now. I hope that for you. Okay. Don't buy a house right away, although it's a great investment. Okay. Stock some of that money away. Put it in a Roth. Now you can only do $6,500 a year, and that number will probably be higher by the time you do it. Okay. Now once you hit a certain amount of money, once you start making over $125,000 a year, they won't let you put money in a Roth anymore. Sorry. Okay. Because you make too much money. They don't want you to benefit from it. Okay. Yeah. Somebody's making decisions there. Okay. So you want to start early. Okay. Obviously. And so my wife, she's way ahead of the game on this than where I was. You know what I mean? Because she got a good job out of college and started investing right away. Okay. And then it took me a while. So, it makes a big difference if you start young. Okay? So this is just some practical information, guys, that you may or may not have known. Did you know this stuff? Have you heard of the Roth? Some of you are shaking your head yes. Okay, that's good. Okay? Just a reminder for those of you who have heard of it. Okay? Good? All right. So let's get back to the notes. And we go here with the, so we talked about how J.P. Morgan and these other guys stepped in, put up $240 million. The market rebounds temporarily. On the 29th, or the 28th, prices fell again. Bankers knew they were overcommitted. And then Tuesday, the worst day of all, we see 16 million shares traded or exchanged, changed hands, 39-year record. So people were selling their stock like for pennies on the dollar. I mean, people were taking whatever they could get and taking huge losses, but they were at least getting something. Okay? Prices fell steeply. The next day, up, down, up, down. The average 50 fell 50%, or the average top 50 companies. So, do you guys ever heard of Montgomery Ward? It was like Sears. Montgomery Ward was like a Sears. Montgomery Ward stock was selling for like $104 a share in September, and dropped by 1932 to $4 a share. I think I shared with you yesterday, General Motors went from like $80 to $8 by 1932. So this was devastating, okay? Now, any guys know what this is?
Calculator.
Yeah, kind of. It's called a ticker tape machine. You ever heard of a ticker tape parade?
Yeah.
You hadn't heard? Okay, New York City, when they have a celebration, so like when Charles Lindbergh got back from France, New York City had a celebration, and they throw confetti out the windows. Okay, it's called a ticker tape parade because these ticker tapes print out these numbers. Now today you see the ticker on the bottom. If you ever watch an ESPN, you see the scores come across the bottom. That's a ticker. If you go to CNBC or Fox Business News, you'll see the ticker running, showing the stock quotes along the bottom, whether they're up or down and so forth. You follow me? You ever seen that? This used to be in the newspaper every day. You open the Wichita Eagle today, you can't find any stock news. Okay, it's a rat. I mean, I don't even know why I'm still buying the dang paper. Okay, but so you got to go to those news stations to get that, or you can go on the internet and see, you know, what stocks are selling for. Okay, but that's what this machine did back in the 1920s. It's called the ticker tape machine, and so they always had this stuff left over at the end of the day, and they used it as confetti for the parades. Like at the end of World War II, they had a massive ticker tape parade. Okay, or when the Yankees win the World Series for the 27th time, because they've won the World Series 27 times. Okay, so they have ticker tape parades. All right. Now, not all of it's ticker tape. I'm sure they use, you know, they make their own confetti for that, for those celebrations as well. But it's part of American history. Okay. So the next page, which I kind of showed you yesterday, Black Thursday, Black Tuesday, and then down in 1932, okay? This is kind of a fun graphic with an investor. So when you're putting money in the stock market, okay, you've got to be optimistic, okay? I'm going to put my money in there. I hope it's going to go up, all right? So it starts to go up. You get excited, thrilled, euphoria. Wow, I'm really smart. I'm making a lot of money in the stock market. Then it starts to go down. Anxiety, I'm a little worried. This isn't really happening, is it? Now you're scared, you're desperate, you panic, you give in to that, you capitulate, and then you're just despondent, depressed. Then it starts to come back up. There's hope, relief, and then you're optimistic again. This is why most people don't watch the market every day. Okay? I've got money here, I got money in my 401k. If I was watching the market every day, I'd be worried about all this money and whether it was going up or down each day. So we meet with our financial advisor twice a year. If we need to adjust some things, we adjust it. Okay? You want to move things into international stocks? You want to move things into bonds? So when you get older, you invest in more safe investments, like bonds. But you're not going to get as big returns. So like if I was in bonds instead of the market itself, then I would have missed out on the 20% gain over the last 12 months. You know what I mean? So there's risk involved, okay? This is the scene outside the New York Stock Exchange the day of the crash. Okay, people were waiting for news. All right, and this used to be a video that worked when I hit the link and it would play. But that doesn't work anymore. So I have it right here. Just got to pull it up. Video clips, stock market crash. Where you at? Oh, gotta open that one. Okay, you ready? Pull this up.
As the Roaring '20s were drawing to an end, so too was an era of relative prosperity for many Americans. As early as 1926, the construction of new housing had decreased. Businesses had too much inventory and too few buyers. Nevertheless, an optimistic America wanted to believe that the good times would last forever, pointing to fortunes that were being made on the stock market. Even people with little money to spare wanted in on the action, and stockbrokers readily agreed to sell shares on margin, where they would lend citizens money to buy stock. These investors figured the stock's price was bound to go up and up, allowing them to pay back the stock's original price tenfold. The constantly rising price of stocks cast a spell over the nation. Noon-hour traffic stood still as people eagerly awaited news of their improved finances. Even distinguished Yale University economist Irving Fisher made a bold speculation.
The nation is marching along a permanently high plateau of prosperity.
But the simple fact was that the price paid for many stocks was unduly out of proportion to the actual profitability of the companies who issued them, creating the illusion of increased value. On October 29, 1929, reality finally caught up with the stock market, and what went up came crashing back down. Panicked investors sold 16 million shares in a single day, many for just pennies a share. Millions of other stocks went unsold entirely on that afternoon, known as Black Tuesday. In just a matter of hours, the stock prices took such a nosedive that any gains made over the previous year vanished. The market's collapse was the most distressing downturn in the history of the New York Stock Exchange. So distressing, in fact, a number of investors committed suicide rather than face financial ruin.
Okay, that last little part there about suicides, this is kind of a misconception that a lot of history books and historians will tell you, that a bunch of people were throwing themselves off of bridges and buildings and stuff like that. Did some people commit suicide in New York? Yes. Okay. But every day in New York, people were committing suicide. There was no great uptick of suicides after the stock market crash. Okay, there were some. Okay, but the way they portray that as if it was a rash of suicides. Okay, which it was not. Okay. All right. So, guys, the whole basis of the problem here with the market is that people were not looking at the value of the companies that they were buying stock in. They were looking at the price and the value of the stock, not how good the company was. So would it be a smart investment to invest in Boeing right now? Probably not. It's down. But if you think the company can pull its act together, they're asking for something like a $10 billion loan from the government right now. Boeing is. And if history is anything tell us, they'll probably get it. Boeing is a massive corporation. They're too big to fail. Okay? So, knowing that, and if they can figure out these glitches with this software, with the 737 MAX, they might be able to get back on their feet. Okay, so their stock price is really low right now. Might be a good time to get in on some Boeing stock, but I don't know. I don't know if they're going to fix those problems. So it's a gamble. Okay, people were looking at the price, not the national product, what the economy was doing. And so when Hoover came out and said the economy was okay, he was wrong. We had already started to see some of these problems with overproduction, wages not keeping pace with production. So that's that worker output outgaining wages. And then you have an unequal distribution of wealth as well. This is something we've always had in America. In the United States is an unequal distribution of wealth. We have it today. All you have to do is ask Bernie Sanders. He'll tell you all about it. Okay? But if you look at this, the poor that we had was large in number you had the bottom 12 million families earning about $1,500 a year. Okay, where the cost of living was $2,000 a year. If you live below the cost of living, you are said to be living in what?
Poverty.
Mm-hmm. And guys, this is about 10% of the population. In 1929, we have roughly 120 million people. Okay? So that's about 10%. Do you guys know what percentage of Americans are living in poverty today? Okay, it's about 1/6 of Americans live in poverty today. So we have a pretty large group of people. Okay? The market crashed. The wealthy got scared. So they stopped spending their money and investing. They started hoarding their money, holding on to it. And so when the wealthy stopped spending and investing, that slowed down the economy even more. The middle class couldn't afford, wasn't big enough or strong enough to, prop the economy up. And a lot of people got laid off and started losing jobs because production's going to continue to decline. Okay, and a lot of the new jobs that we got in the 1920s were these manufacturing jobs, these blue collar, go work in a factory, earn a good wage, just like our folks at Boeing. Those are blue collar workers. We're losing 2,900 of them. Okay, and they're good paying jobs. This, with Spirit. Okay, and so this is going to affect the economy. And really, this whole Boeing thing is affecting our economy. I mean, there's a lot of other sectors that are doing well. This is a drag on our economy, what's happening with Boeing. There's no question. It's a drag on our economy in Kansas. It's a big deal, okay? So, it's sad. I wish they could fix it. Okay, there's other flaws. We already talked about war debts and tariffs, yes? Other nations couldn't afford to buy our products because they couldn't sell their products here. Okay? That means when they're not buying our products, we have an even more slowdown in production. This is an ugly spiral that we're about to go into until we hit rock bottom in 32. Okay? Now this is kind of a crazy thing. Holding companies. These were a problem. Okay, let's say your name is Henry Ford, okay, and you own a publicly traded company, Ford Motor Company, and let's say Henry Ford decides to issue $1 million worth of stock, and people can buy this, okay? So Ford gets $1 million by selling its own stock, okay? Instead of Henry Ford investing that money in his own company, he says, I'm going to invest that in Whirlpool stock and make money there. Because I can make money in the market too, using the money that I got from selling my own stock. So they buy $1 million of Whirlpool stock, but who's buying new washing machines and refrigerators anymore with the economy on the skids? So what happens to the value of Whirlpool stock? It goes down. Where's the money go? It just disappears. Okay? This is really bad. Okay? So they're selling their own stock to buy other people's stock. They're playing the game just like the rest of America. Okay? Now my dad was born on October 21st, 1929. 8 days before the stock market crash. Okay? My grandfather was a welder. He didn't own any stock. He didn't lose lose his tail in the stock market. Did the stock market crash affect him as a welder? Yeah, eventually it would, within months. That would filter down and he would have less work to do because people didn't need things welded because they weren't building. Okay, so it's going to affect the whole country. The stock market itself is a gambling arena. Okay, and just as this says down here, citizens didn't realize it was just the price of the stock, not the value of the national product. What was our economy doing? Was it growing? Okay, the stock market today would not be doing what it's doing if our economy wasn't growing. Okay, if the economy is contracting, in recession or depression, worse, the stock market's not going to react in kind. I mean, it's going to drop as well. Okay. Yeah.
Did the Dust Bowl during the 30s accelerate the rock bottom in 32 because farmers weren't?
Yeah, one of the things we're going to be talking about shortly is bank failures. So farmers, just like everybody else, borrow money to buy land or seed or new tractors, that sort of thing, right? When the Dust Bowl hit, it's a combination of both the tariffs, because we're trying to sell our food overseas, but we're in a trade war with Europe, so they're not buying our food, okay? So when you had good crops, the value of those crops went down because you had a surplus of food because you weren't able to sell it overseas. You know what I mean? So farmers aren't making enough money selling their crop to pay their loans, and then you throw the Dust Bowl into that, the people that lived in this part of the country, especially west of here, okay? Wichita area didn't get hit real hard by the Dust Bowl. You got to go a little bit further western Kansas or mid to western Kansas. And yeah, I mean, you can't grow anything in that. It's a drought. And then there's the sandstorms and all that. So yeah, a combination of this will be devastating for our farmers. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I think, okay. Yeah, so, and then when they can't pay back their loans, rural banks, like small banks in rural areas, they're going to start going under. Okay, because they're not getting paid back all the loans they made out, okay, to the farmers. So yeah, this gets pretty bad. There's a lot of economic factors here, okay, and we try and learn from history on this, right? I mean, we want to make sure this doesn't happen again. And so that's why, when you start talking about tariffs and what President Trump's doing, it scares people, okay? And you have a right to be scared because of what history teaches us. And so you kind of got to evaluate everything we know about history and so forth, and whether the Chinese are giving us a good trade deal or an unfair trade deal and so forth, and whether we should stand up to them, whether we should put tariffs on them and so forth. Okay. We good on this slide? Okay, so President Hoover. Hoover's going to take action. What's he going to do? Before I do this, guys, I want to give you a little background on Herbert Hoover. All right? I thought that maybe you guys would want to say hi to your classmates. Hi. Hi. There's Herbert Hoover over there in the corner. He's the one on the right of the three pictures there. Okay? Herbert Hoover was an orphan as a child. Okay? His parents passed away. He was raised in part by I think it was his aunt and uncle. He put himself through Stanford. He's a very bright guy. Studied engineering, okay, at Stanford. And when he graduated, he started his own mining company and became a multi-millionaire, a great businessman. Now, Herbert Hoover's also a very strong Christian man. He's a Protestant, of course, and he is very devout in his beliefs. During World War I, Hoover, who's a millionaire, used his own money to go to Europe, and he set up aid stations for food supplies, medical supplies for victims of World War I with his own money. Okay, so when Harding was elected, he chose Hoover to be his Secretary of Commerce. Okay, and so Hoover kind of bounces off the Secretary of Commerce thing into running for President of the United States. Now, we didn't really talk about the 1928 election where he won. He defeated a guy named Al Smith. Okay, Al Smith will be on your test. He's not in your notes, but he's on the review sheet, and I'll remind everybody of who he was when we get there. Okay, but Al Smith was a first in the United States. He was the Democratic nominee. Hoover, of course, a Republican. Al Smith was the first Catholic to run on a major party ticket for President of the United States. 1928. He's a New Yorker. Okay, when we talk about New Yorkers, tried and true New Yorker, you know how they talk fast and loud. These New Yorkers, okay? And that was Al Smith. Great sense of humor. I mean, just a fantastic politician. Okay, he was governor of New York and so forth. Okay, so he's kind of a fun guy to study. If you're looking for a book for this class to read, book on Al Smith might be entertaining. But obviously he's going to lose to Hoover. Okay, one of the big campaign issues in 28 was prohibition. Okay, and Al Smith was opposed to prohibition, wanted to do away with it. Okay, Hoover, the very devout evangelical Protestant, was in favor of keeping prohibition. Okay, so it's kind of an interesting deal there. Okay, so Hoover kind of made it on his own. He's a self-made, successful person. Do you understand? And he really came from very humble beginnings as an orphan. Okay, so Hoover's got this worldview that if I can do that, somebody that was an orphan, other people should be able to do that. So you have to understand his way of thinking when you look at how he reacts to the Depression. Does this make sense? Now, Hoover had only been in office since March when the stock market crashes. Was it his fault? Can a president turn an economy on its head in 6 months? Pretty hard to do. Okay? In fact, they really didn't pass much legislation in the first 6 months of his presidency. Okay? The underlying problems of the Depression were there before Hoover even was elected. You understand? We've already talked about it. But he's going to get blamed for it. What he'll get blamed for more is his reaction to it. Okay? So he kind of goes down in history as a failed president. Okay? And one of two American presidents that were engineers. Anybody know the other one? They called Hoover the Great Engineer. That was his nickname, the Great Engineer. The two engineers we've had as president oversaw two of the worst economic 4-year eras in American history. And the other one was Jimmy Carter, who was elected in 1976. He was an engineer. Okay. So the moral of the story is, don't elect an engineer for president. Okay. Let them do their thing. Okay. I'm kidding, but yeah. Oops, I didn't mean to put all that up there. Because you won't listen to me. All right. So what does Hoover do? He calls on cities, states, charities to help feed the hungry. So this was a very common picture in our cities, our towns. This is a soup kitchen. Any guys ever worked down at the Lord's Diner? Okay, it's volunteer down there. So that's kind of a similar situation there. All right. He brought business leaders into the White House and said, look, try and keep your wages up. If people are still getting paid money, they'll spend it. And that'll get our economy going again. They tried to cut taxes. Do you remember? Andrew Mellon back in 1924, they set the wealthy tax rate to 25%. So there's not a lot of room to cut taxes, and middle class and lower class taxes were even lower than that. So there's just not a lot of room to cut taxes. It's not going to make much of a difference. Okay? Mellon, who's still Secretary of Treasury, okay, Harding, Coolidge, and now Hoover, says, we're going to take the traditional approach. Let businesses liquidate. Purge the rottenness from the system. If you can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen. Thank you for laughing. Okay. Have you not heard that before? Can't stand the heat? Yeah, get out of the kitchen.
I was going to say get out of the sun.
Listen. Remember in government at the beginning of the semester last year when we talked about bailouts for our big companies? Too big to fail? Remember that?
Yeah.
You just had that. In 2009, we bailed out these big companies. The big banks, General Motors, AIG, and so forth. Back then, this is a conservative approach, okay? Look, if they can't survive, it's not the government's job to bail them out, okay? So we're going to purge that rottenness from the system, and things will be all right. Who is this for? I don't know what that's about. Okay. Oh. Looks like I'm subbing. Wonderful. Time we get up?
10.
I'll do a little more. All right. Aid to farmers and for businesses. Okay. So what is government willing to do? Okay. So the key thing with Hoover, you need to remember, he will loan you money, but he's not going to give you something for nothing. Okay? We're not doing welfare. There's no welfare, especially from the federal government. Now, if states want to do some welfare, if local communities want to do some welfare, help them out, help people out, but not at the national level. Okay? He'll give loans. So they create the Federal Farm Board. $500 million in loans to farmers to market their crops. Well, what that basically means, market your crops, is sell their crops. Okay? And it doesn't work. Nobody's buying. We have a surplus of food and people are hungry. Food is pretty cheap, but some people are just flat broke. Okay? So the goal is to try and keep prices steady for farmers so farmers don't go under. Ended up, the government bought a huge amount of crops, couldn't keep prices up. And so the whole thing is going to start to, we just talked about this with farmers, prices are going to drop. So in 1931, a bushel of wheat went from $1 a bushel, which doesn't seem like very much, to 61 cents, almost a 40% drop. How are these farmers going to make a living? A pound of cotton went from 16 cents a pound to 6 cents a pound. So, I mean, these farmers are in trouble. The government will end up buying this food, but not being able to sell it. It'll take a $185 million loss. Okay? So Hoover goes to Congress. He says, all right, we need to fix this. These other companies that are sending food into our country are undercutting our farmers. So we need to stop this stuff from coming in. Now, what is cotton used for? I know we don't use it for food, but what do we use it for?
Clothes.
Yeah. There's a whole industry that makes linens and clothes and blankets and all that, called the textile industry. Yes? And we have a large textile industry in the United States at this time. Okay, now most of the textiles we buy are made where?
China.
Or South America. I mean, now you see a lot. You see stuff from Guatemala. I've seen clothes from Peru. I've seen clothes from Mexico. That's where the textile industry is. We don't have much here in the United States anymore. Okay? So But we did then. And so Hoover asked for a limited revision on the tariff to boost textiles, to stop textiles from coming into the country by jacking up tariffs on them. So people would buy American products and American cotton. Okay, do you know where else in the world they make cotton? Some of the best cotton in the world comes from Egypt. Okay? So if you buy really high-priced sheets for your bed, okay, super good quality cotton, comes from the Nile region, the Nile Delta in Egypt. Bet you didn't know that. Are you packing up?
No.
I think you're packing up.
No.
We get out at 10 or 10:10?
At 10.
Okay, so tomorrow we're going to begin with the impact of this tariff that they're going to do, because Congress is going to overdo it. Have a safe trip.